Then the next scene was back in a house, but it was my parents' house. Their combined house, in fact. Their personal selves combined, suggesting emotional attachment, which would be expected with married couples. However, they seemed to have incorporated even more stuff here than was their own. I had the sense that not only was this their personal selves combined into one house, but the contents of another individual's house was here too. I voiced my disapproval of this situation, and I recognized from this scene that my parents had made an affiliation with an individual which they evidently trusted. They had agreed with whoever this person was, and as such had incorporated the ideas that he represented into their combined personal selves. I had the sense of this individual's ill intent, but he had obviously ployed my parents and marketed the ideas he represented as beneficial. They had agreed, and I suspect my parents were taplined consequently. For my parents suddenly would vanish, as though sucked back into creation, I would surmise. For here they initially featured in my real side experience, as though we were on the same vibrational wavelength, you might say. Then the agreement with the ideas the ill-intended person represented had them removed from my experience to somewhere else, falling back into the personal self and creation, duped by possibly a dark controller, reptilian type character. And indeed, I took it upon myself to find them. I chose the travelling method of flying as I went from place to place. All the locations I searched were very gloomy, oppressive, and dark in their settings. I surmised this to be the lower astral, or areas of it, and further suggesting the taplining that agreement to this individual had resulted in had aligned my parents with the lower astral. There were unsavoury, sinister type buildings everywhere, full of equally as unsavoury type characters. I conducted my search under a veil of secrecy. I had made myself invisible to their eyes, as though operating from a recognitional position they could not perceive, as I had no need to directly interact with the lower astral. I was only searching, and so could do so in this manner. I could pass through the walls of the buildings also, as though I were an apparition. With awareness, one can operate on multiple levels and positions at once, and it is according to the awareness and recognition of the others in your experience, if they can perceive you or not. Most here could not, but a few, it seemed, could indeed see me. They did what was expected of such dubious characters. They attacked me, or tried to. As they made a grab at me, it was as though they were grabbing at air. Some seemed satisfied they had secured me, but I simply stepped back, and they had a kind of wispy, ghostly impression of me in their clutches, where I had just been standing. My presence had been detected, and I'm sure the ones who had perceived me had informed the less perceptually aware of their number. At one point, a trap was laid. I entered a room as my search continued, only to find it full of caged gigantic snakes. Suddenly, the cages opened, and the snakes slithered at me with menace, perhaps representing reptilians, perhaps just lesser cabal minions, their slithering on their belly, demonstrating their awareness and chosen position in life, perhaps the expendable type reptilian lackeys. I simply rose my hands in the air, and they all fell unconscious. Again, my real self knew how to do this, but on this experience I was fully conscious, as I said, and consciously was able to do this and know how. It was as though I simply demanded and expected this to be so. The raising hands, not even a requirement, in fact, more for effect. Anyway, I abandoned my search temporarily, and flew over and across these dark and dismal lands to another location. It seemed to be a place that had armour available, that was being bartered for, sold and traded. There was the armour that could be seen, sort of crude and basic stuff. But there was armour that was kind of there, but apparent to no one but me. And this was far grander and more resplendent in design. It was almost like the armour of the ears, and like anything is related, it required recognition to see it, claim it, and wear it. A little like the whole process of ears recognition, in fact. You need the real awareness to be able to know of the ears, but to embody the isness, to stand real with it, requires recognition. To wear the armour of the ears, I needed to have the awareness of it, and then to recognise it. These other individuals could not, and so they were resigned to lesser creational armour, if you will. And so then, perhaps, in order to continue with my mission, required a greater connection to my real awareness and recognition of the ears that would allow me better insight to deal with this situation. Thus it was so. I donned my armour and went on my way. Interestingly, as I was flying, I became two people, and I took this to be my personal self and my real self, both wearing the ears' armour, and both on the adventure. I would never find my parents. Perhaps part 2 will feature at a later date. This experience may well serve as a heads up to be wary of agreements that stem from seemingly beneficial sources, the marketing ploy of reptilian systems of control, the dark forces always seeking to litter our paths with what are restricting and taplining ideas. And if we agree to them, we can have our journey to eventually standing real with the ears curtailed. The agreement here stemmed from a reptilian source, or so it would seem, and not only being restricted to creation would be the effect, but possibly a lower astral alignment, as was seemingly demonstrated here. The final scene would be a dialogue with Dwayne. It was long and extensive, and he spoke to me about a great many things, all the various aspects and facets of the process of awareness. It was very comprehensive, and an emphasis on the personal self, and how it always is such a burden to have to drag it through our journey with us. But while in creation, we always will have a personal self. It will do its funny things, and we simply must deal with it and get it focused on the real intent of the real self throughout the 5 vehicles of itself. The real intent being the reason we are in the simulation, to recognize the all is, stand real with it and the guides, and supersede creation.
Well, Kevin, I'll jump in here. Amazing. Thank you for showing up again. You're very, very much appreciated. I like that part with Dolph Lundgren. There is more to that. It's interesting that you bring that up. I won't say what that is now, but that's a very important part that he showed up, but it's not really him. But anyhow, no, that's terrific, and you've explained a lot. Really appreciate it. And all your detail. I know this will help a lot of people. And, you know, for the most part, I also understand that, you know, because of all the things we've come through in creation, all the lifetimes, all the ideas that we have, especially today, most of it is deception, convoluted, funny stuff that sounds good, etc. And people, you know, they're confused. They really are. They have the idea of a creator, of the source, of the this and that. And these are just ideas that they come to know, but not a real recognition of what is taking place. That's very important. And that recognition is something that in a way cannot even be considered. And that recognition equals what people demonstrate, and whether they know it or not, and for the most part they don't. But that's the very important part of life, and it is so real that, yes, to get a grasp of that and to get the personal self in line, you know, it used to be called the little self and then the higher self. But, you know, these things weren't really defined. The idea is that, oh, you listen to words of wisdom, you listen to the guidance of the master, etc. But that's kind of like after a while your parents telling you what to do all the time. So again, that kind of runs out. And the words of wisdom and all these things, again, they're ideas that people formulate. And there is a reality that is far more so continuously. But again, you are hugely appreciated for what you've stepped up to do. And yes, the protection, you know, Paul talked about that too. You have the protection. But yeah, the real protection is your intent with the is, it becomes automatic. And so in your experience here, you have that intention, so the protection becomes automatic. You don't have to ask for it. You don't have to look for it. Just like a soldier out there on the battlefield, you just go forward, do or die, see what happens, etc. And that's the best part of it all, is that all of a sudden at some point you recognize, wow, it is already there. All I have to do is just take the risk And again, this is a world where people are sold security, which is all false, that you're protected here or there or whatever on the internet, or you live in a community where there's a gate guard, or you're a U.S. citizen, or all these ideas that are false. They're all falsehoods. But everything's okay. Because again, yes, we deal with creation, and it's not about the old stuff. And in Paul's book, you know, there was the ek, he called it, and the cow. Okay, so you've got this opposition going. The new nowness is that you simply become aware of what's taking place. We're not labeling things good and bad, right and wrong. You know, whatever it comes to, and it can be your diet, your health, your job, whatever. That's very secondary. Again, it's about your overall intent, and you know, you deciding to accomplish this while you're here, and your process there of what you're going through, and everybody does it their own way, and how you objectively detail this. It's terrific. It is really, really terrific, and this is what the world needs, and to wake up and to recognize they don't have to agree with authorities. We don't need authorities. We are beings of light, and in the real universes, the is just itself, and it's not an authority. It's an isness, and that's all here now. And so, again, thank you many times, and Peter and Pierce and all of you for stepping up. Thank you, kids. That's great. It's, as always, really great. Thank you for showing up. And yes, we get the big adventure, and it's more than an action film, but you have to decide the adventure. You have to decide to step up and be part of it, take the risk, do something you've never done before. That's the fun part, and to see what happens next. Yeah. So again, it's for everybody here. Thank you. It's all for you. See you next time. Thank you, guys. See you soon.